Hey, with you evening story channel, I post new interesting stories every day. Subscribe and click the bell to not miss it.
Is father out of his mind? Arthur exclaimed, barely able to lift the bride's veil. Who do you want me to marry? This one, and not just marry him, so that we can live in peace and harmony and scold your children like rabbits. That's never gonna happen. Benjamin tried to calm his son down, but it was too late. Arthur had already managed to embarrass him in front of all honest people. The astonished guests watched in horror. The bride's tears were streaming down her cheeks. After a few minutes, Arthur ran out of the house and went wherever he was going. When he reached the forest and sat down on the first stump, he replayed in his head the conversation with his father a few days before and could not believe that he was so indifferent to the suffering of his own son. "You want to inherit some of my assets, don't you?" Benjamin Arthur asked sternly. Knowing the answer in advance, "You don't say anything. Do you want to? If you do, you must marry. But how can I entrust the management of such a serious business to a young man without a family and children? Where's the guarantee that you won't blow it?" It didn't make sense to Arthur. What did the perception of a father in the family have to do with responsibility? Benjamin was a man of strict rules and regulations of the old school and was not ready to compromise his principles under any circumstances. An unmarried man, he always said, is an empty man. A man without a purpose is not creative. Neither is a family without children. It's just two people joining together to cohabit. Therefore, until Arthur marries, any trust in the management of the business is out of the question. I'm not gonna let my capital go to waste. Benjamin didn't just want to marry his son. Arthur was to marry the woman his father had chosen for him. "Your future wife is Kelly, period," he said sternly. But Arthur tried to tell his father that he had already found the girl of his dreams. "Her father and I go way back. Honorable man. How much business can Sebastian and I do together? Once we get you and Kelly married, you can't count your maidens. You don't need all these companions. You'd like to marry someone who belonged to who knows who before you. Modern girls are like that. There's no place to brand them. You marry Kelly and that's it." Father wouldn't even listen to Arthur's arguments. They seemed completely unfounded to the stern man. "Clara, tell me something," he asked his wife, who had entered the study just as Arthur was running out of it. "What am I doing wrong? I've built a business for him and found him a wife. What more does he need? I don't know if I'm a bad father or if kids are spoiled these days. You do everything for them, and all they give you in return is a recount. Yeah, they get into scandals. It's a shame." Clara always supported her husband in everything, so she immediately began to calm him down. She said devotedly, looking into his eyes, "But how can you be a bad father? All you do is look out for Arthur's welfare. He and I have spent our whole lives behind you like a stone wall." He couldn't ask for better. They were given only one son from above, who was born with great difficulty after 5 years of marriage. Everyone around them just read it. What a marriageable wife Benjamin has. By the time they had Arthur, and the families of all their acquaintances and friends had 3-4 children each. Clara felt guilty to her husband all her life for giving him only one hair. "Yes, he used to say in the last years he grew on my head, all because I didn't have time to raise him. If I'd had time, I would have taught him a lesson. But it's too late to take the whip now. He's grown up willful and selfish, and we're left to pick up the pieces." He never reproached his wife for the fact that she was able to give birth to only one son. But deep down, Benjamin really wanted a large family, so he tried to organize the life of his son in a way that he could not build his own, but Arthur's desires and emotions. The man deeply did not care, and he himself realized it. What was that now? He hissed Aunt Nancy into Kelly's ear. Look at what her mother had brought her to. Witnessing her own daughter's shame, Clara wept quietly. She could not believe that Kelly and Arthur were to be married half an hour ago. She couldn't believe that Paul's daughter was so low as to be rejected by her fiancé right on her wedding day. "Come with me. With you, my daughter, I will have a separate and very serious conversation. No father, no mother, no aunt." They didn't even try to find out why Arthur did what he did. All the blame immediately fell on the shoulders of Kelly, who, out of desperation, had decided to commit a desperate and obscene act. "Keep in mind," Clara said sternly when she had calmed down and come to her senses, If you do not solve the question with the wedding, you will go out of the house, even begging for alms, even with your 9 classes of education. Go scrub the floors. We won't tolerate disgrace in our own house anyway. In the meantime, sit down. Think about what Arthur could have gotten you into that he turned you down in public. Maybe you were out in the wrong place, and he saw it by accident or worse, a few hours in her room. Kelly realized that she had no choice but to talk to Arthur herself. If she didn't, she would really have to go begging or worse, to another town, and she'd have to run for her life. And anything could happen on the way. Kelly left the room through the window and went to Arthur's house. Waving over the fence, she saw a window on the 2nd floor open wide, where a young man was sitting reading a book. B had climbed under the balcony of the lower windows. Kelly looked up at Arthur from below. He almost fell out of the window from surprise, the horror. "Now I'm haunted by nightmares," he exclaimed, climbing down from the window into the room. Arthur held out his hand to the girl, and a few minutes later they were sitting together on the floor. "What are you doing here?" he asked in surprise. "How did you even find me? You're crazy, of course." "Well, tell me why you're here. I really need to talk to you," the girl answered calmly. "Can you listen to me?" Listening to Kelly, Arthur came to the conclusion that they were united by a common misfortune, and they should help each other. "I understand you very well," he said. "In our families, as they say, we don't do well. And if your relatives do not understand that I gave you up only because I do not love you, and no other reasons, they can really kick you out of the house, and they will not understand it, because for them it will still be your fault. Your plight is no better," Kelly answered him, who also sympathized with Arthur. "After all, you are used to a certain way of life. To lose that for some love would be just stupid." "It's not just that," he exclaimed. "I love my father and mother. It's as if they don't understand that, as if they don't want to understand. And the fact that I am an adult, I have my own life, and I have every right to choose a wife to my liking, and not to marry the one my father pointed out to me." They agreed that they had decided to get married after all. Kelly was surprised at this development. In the afternoon, she had thought her life was over, but now she was saved. That was the only thing Arthur had said so sternly. "I'm doing this out of pity. You're also doing it to help me out as a human being. Nothing can happen between us." "Well, you know what I mean?" "Of course I do." They went out the window together. And after walking Kelly home, who had gotten into her room the same tried and true way and managed to remain unnoticed by her parents and aunt, Arthur went to the meeting he had previously arranged by text message. "I do not understand and will never understand these all your grimaces and jumps." The girl was indignant. "Why cannot you just tell your father that you want to marry me, and not this hurts her, Kelly?" added Arthur. "Yes, Kelly. Why should I share you with anyone? What the hell is this? You say, as soon as you get the chance, you divorce her right away. What if the opportunity never presents itself? What if it's for life?" The girl's question is a serious one for Arthur. Until now, he had never thought about what would happen if he could not divorce Kelly. The young man hoped that their marriage would lose all meaning to his father. A couple of years later, when the family never produced any heirs to his newly wedded wife, he wasn't even going to touch her. They had agreed that they would sleep in the same bed in case anyone ever entered the room, so that there would be no unnecessary questions. As we know, co-sleeping doesn't make babies. Arthur could think of no other options. The absence of children was the only reason why the father himself would insist on a divorce. "Let me talk to your father myself." Senia continued to insist. "I'll explain everything to him. I will say that you and I love each other and want to be together. He will understand everything." "You don't know him well," answered Arthur doubtfully. "He won't even listen to you. He'll be kicked out, and he's certainly not going to understand. It's useless. Anyway, let's not talk about sad things. You'll be waiting for me." "Well, of course I will. How did lips sting you? I hope that you'll come back to me free, just in a couple of years." "You don't understand. I'm not going to leave you. We'll see each other. If anything, my new wife has my back." Benjamin was very much surprised when the next day his son informed him that he had changed his mind. "I wonder what caused it." He pondered thoughtfully, sitting in his office opposite Clara, who, as always, listened attentively to her husband when he was talking about something important to him. "Who cares?" the woman replied. "You do care. The important thing is that we avoid disgrace, and the poor girl too." Can you imagine what it would be like for her to appear in front of all the honest people if Arthur had never married her? It's just awful. I don't know what I'd do if I were her. A stone around her neck and into the water. We should announce the new wedding date as soon as possible, before there are rumors that Kelly is flawed or defective. We have to save our family and the girl from embarrassment. And as soon as possible. After Arthur said he was ready to get married anytime tomorrow, Benjamin announced a new wedding date. You are already husband and wife to the people, he said, giving his fatherly blessing. Tonight you should already go to the same bedroom, but the registry office will register your relationship later. It makes no difference to us. Kelly and Arthur did their best to make happy faces. Only Aunt Nancy noticed something was wrong with her niece and fiancé. Clara, did she explain anything to you? She asked. Poked the girl's mother, who was standing next to her, in the side. Why did Arthur change his mind so quickly? Nancy, well, what does it matter to us? The woman dismissed it. Apparently, Benjamin explained to him what the price was. Arthur wouldn't live in some rented apartment and spend it all himself. He's used to something different. So he took my Kelly like he should. It's lucky the wedding's still a couple weeks away, if not sooner. Arthur's escape will be forgotten. They'll put it down to excitement. And my daughter won't have any nasty rumors about her. What more could I ask for? Goodbye. Clara, Nancy, Benjamin, Clara, and Sebastian were all jubilant about their children's wedding. Arthur and Kelly were not amused. After politely saying goodbye to their guests, they went upstairs and locked themselves in the bedroom suite. I wonder why our fathers agreed to celebrate the wedding at your place, Kelly asked in surprise. It's like the last time we celebrated, and your father even insisted that it be at the bride's house. How would I know? Arthur, who was so tired by the end of the party that the only thing he wanted to do was to lay his head on a pillow and sleep. But he was embarrassed by the presence of Kelly, who was a complete stranger to him. Lie down already, she exclaimed. I closed the door, but by a slit, so we can be sure that no one will bother us until morning, more than we can be sure that we won't sit in your father's office until dawn, discussing how soon they would have to babysit their grandchildren. It would never happen, Arthur said, and engrossed on the very bed, fell asleep immediately. Kelly, on the other hand, could not sleep for a long time. She realized that she didn't dislike Arthur at all, and she wouldn't mind if they had a real wedding night, but she didn't dare to wake him up and tell him. Kelly was used to keeping agreements and didn't want to ruin her friendship with Arthur for nothing. Besides, she knew for sure that he didn't. Not love, but dislike. He wasn't attracted to her at all, and Kelly had no choice but to accept it. You've been living here for a month and it hasn't happened once, Clara asked her daughter. The woman was very surprised that Kelly was still not pregnant. Maybe you're a defective child. Keep in mind, grandchildren are the most important thing. No man wants you without kids. The luckiest heir is the one conceived on the wedding night. That's not the case with you and Arthur. It's a shame. I was so hopeful. It wasn't just Kelly who had to fend off intrusive questions, but Arthur as well. Benjamin wondered why his daughter-in-law wasn't still carrying an heir. It didn't even occur to either of them that the children had been married formally for all this time and had never been together as husband and wife. And it was another month after the wedding that Benjamin became completely uninterested. Every day he felt worse and worse, and Clara, concerned about the condition, his wife, almost on her knees, begged him to finally go to a doctor. Stop stalling, Benjamin, she exclaimed, seeing her husband struggling to move because of severe pain in the abdomen and chest. You've hardly eaten anything for a day. I'm on the cat's left side. What's the use of all this booze? You've lost weight. You got circles under your eyes. There's obviously something wrong with you. And I'm going to have my wife telling me how to live my life. Benjamin waved it off. He couldn't admit to Clara that he couldn't eat because every meal cost him a lot of pain. Hours later, Clara's condition also left much to be desired. Every day, Kelly listened to Aunt Nancy tell of her stories of how her mother had once again fallen ill, and she could barely stay on her feet without passing out. Go for a checkup together, Sebastian said, from whom the wife hid her condition. For a long time, she was ashamed to admit to her husband that she was not feeling well, so she put up with the pains of hell as best she could, pretending that everything was fine. Even I can't even look at this anymore. Are you laughing? Benjamin asked. Are you suggesting to me that my wife should go to the examination by the hand? Why did you tell her about me anyway? So if you're a man, I can't look weak in front of every woman. You're a fool, Benjamin. Sebastian exclaimed in his heart. When you're in the next world, it won't make any difference who is strong and who is weak, and go and get yourself examined before it's too late. The diagnoses were disappointing. How could you let yourself go so far? The doctor was disappointed when he got Benjamin's test results. You'll have to undergo regular therapy. But I'm telling you right away that it's far from certain that it will improve your situation. Usually at this stage, unfortunately, the tumor is no longer operable, so you can only hope and believe in the best. Clara could not find a place to sit when she returned home from the hospital where she had accompanied her spouse and Clara. She sat down on the living room couch and burst into tears. "Mom, what's wrong?" Arthur asked excitedly. "It's so bad. It's the worst, son. It's the worst," replied the woman. "By the way, your Kelly mother's condition is no better." Turned to the girl, who immediately left the room as soon as she heard the noise in the living room. That evening, Arthur realized for the first time in his entire life how much he cared for his father. He sat silently in his bedroom for several hours. Kelly sat next to him and held his hand the whole time. Arthur, despair. She tried to reassure the young man. "Maybe everything will turn out all right. You know, how many people on earth have heard that they are terminally ill, and then they suddenly get better? You have to believe in the best." "I don't want to believe in anything," Arthur said. "I don't know how it's going to end, do I? Well, excuse me, I have to go out. I'll be late, as usual, as a good old-fashioned tradition, so as not to wake up my mother and answer stupid questions." Arthur left the house through the window, and the only thing he really wanted to do that night was get drunk. And as it turned out, his father's illness was not the only reason for this desire. As soon as he entered the bar, where they usually liked to spend time with Xenia, he saw his girlfriend at the same table with a young man. No, he realized that they had been seeing each other less and less lately. Arthur had been completely consumed with business and family, and then a bad health scare hit him like a snowball. He could understand everything, but he didn't expect such a betrayal. "Is that how you love me?" he asked, approaching the table. Arthur wanted to dot all the I's so that he had no illusions. "Arthur, wait. But Xenia was cooking. You've got it all wrong. I'll explain it to you now." "What are you going to explain to me?" "How do you date at the same time with me and another man?" exclaimed Arthur, who at that moment least wanted to listen to false excuses. "Why did you come here in the first place?" Xenia's admirer intervened in the conversation. "You have a wife and family there. Stay at home. Don't forget the kids. Did I forget to ask you?" Arthur snapped at him. After exchanging blows, the young men left the establishment and, reaching the house, Arthur jumped through the window, carefully treating Arthur's bruises. Kelly didn't even bother to ask what had happened. At that moment, the young man felt for the first time that he was enjoying this girl's company. She was not intrusive, not demanding, open and positive. There was always something to talk about with her. Every day, they visited their parents in the hospital together with Kelly. One day, Benjamin looked his son in the eyes and said, "You know, Arthur, I realize that health is the most important thing. I don't care about all the money and connections and opportunities, and there's nothing worse than being bedridden and lying like a vegetable, and every movement gives you a terrible pain in your body." The man felt guilty in front of his son and wanted to apologize to him, but he could not find the strength to tell him something very important. Only a week later, when all the documents were prepared for the man's transportation abroad, where he was to undergo a complicated operation, did he find the right words to express his regret for having forced his son to marry. "Arthur, forgive me, you old fool," Benjamin muttered. "I've clung to these worthless principles all my life. But what's the use of all these words now? If I die, you can divorce your unloved Kelly and marry the woman you like. It's the right thing to do." After a frank conversation with his father, Arthur left the room in tears. Kelly was walking towards him crying. She had just said goodbye to her mother, who would be flying to the same clinic as Benjamin for surgery any day now. And there was a frank conversation between them too. The parents returned home only 3 months later. Both surgeries had been successful, and now Benjamin and or were going through a period of rehabilitation and recovery. When they saw Arthur and Kelly welcoming them back together, they were surprised. "So you two aren't divorced?" Benjamin asked. "I told you, son." "Dad, First of all, you said I could get a divorce if you died. You didn't specify the rest, Arthur grinned, and luckily you're alive. And two, we realized that we love each other. And third, a month ago we found out we were having a baby. Can't leave a woman who's having a baby with me. It's just not manly. Clara and Benjamin gave their children a big hug. 8 months later, Kelly and Arthur had a son, Tim.